So, welcome, soulful heroes, to another soulful conversation. It is my pleasure to share with you two beloveds, Patrick Harrington and Cameron Dabney, um, founders of Kindness Yoga in Denver. And they're here to tell us a little bit more about their new expression of their work. And being that this week is Valentine's, we're going to be talking about relationships and what it means to have conscious relationships. So welcome, you two.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Christian.
Christian. Yeah, I love to be here with you.
I'm so happy to have you here. And it's one of my delights in life that I got to marry you some years ago.
Ours too. Imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah, what a beautiful ceremony it was, and what a beautiful experience. And so, you're one of those relationships that I look up to because you really do it consciously and approach it consciously. So let's start there. Like, what makes a healthy relationship work?
I just want to first acknowledge if you hear banging in the background, Christian, let us know and we'll shift. We have some neighbors doing some construction nearby, but what makes the relationship work? For me, I think it's actually doing our own work side by side and allowing each other space to do our own work. And then the vulnerability of talking about where we are and what we're learning, and having the relationship be the platform or the stage on which we actually practice and try out what we're learning. There's not too many places in life where you get someone who's relatable enough, someone you've chosen to be in relationship with, that can actually dance with you. And, not all relationships are like that, but yet we can, even when we're very rigid with each other, there's ways of us starting to become a bit more flexible and to start to dance with each other again.
I love that. And to me, that is one of the ways in which I define a conscious relationship. I mean, one of the ways is, like, from the get-go, we realize that there isn't anybody out there who's going to make us happy, and it's not their job to. So to me, that's like the basis of what a conscious relationship is. The second one is it's what you're talking about, is that willingness to do the work. Because if we want to shine a light on those blind spots that we all have, get in relationship, because we're so brilliant at pointing them out for each other. What about you, Patrick? What does that mean to you? What does a conscious relationship mean to you?
Well, I think one thing that's interesting about, for Cameron and I being married and watching the iterations of our relationship, both of us have been divorced before. And so we like to say that, everyone should have a good practice marriage. And that there's something that you learn in declaring forever publicly that you don't learn any other way. And marriage is really the only place that you declare forever. And so there's not a lot of places to practice that level of yes, because everything else is conditional based on, does it feel good? Am I comfortable? Do I want to? Am I motivated? And here's a place where, in front of, ostensibly, some people elope and it's just them and nature or whatever. But for us, here's a place where, for our families, some very close friends, to witness us declaring what we want to practice together. And so for that, I think for me, there's a willingness to sit in the discomfort that inevitably comes up over time when we're growing as people or stagnating as people. And if not for that declaration and that clear, this is a different relationship, I think it's easy to get lost and to try and go get comfortable. And it's something that, as we're longer and longer in relationship, we see more and more of our people around us getting divorced.
Mhm.
And for us, we continue to peel back the layers, and we continue to, for me, understand that the polarity of the feminine essence is in Cameron in a bottomless way. Like, I can keep discovering the masculine surrendering to the feminine again and again and again and again and again, and dig this deeper and deeper well with the feminine, which Cameron is an access point for, versus so many people I see out there wanting to experiment with the feminine in all these different bodies. To me, it's a distraction from how deep that well is. It's like going out into the ocean. It's like you're never going to not be discovering the ocean. It's that big. Well, that's the feminine, and it all lives inside of her. And so my that's just a forever process.
And what I love about, well, a couple of things you said that I really resonate with. One is making that choice, that commitment, not out of fear, not out of conditioning, but because of that excitement of that exploration, that endless possibility. And I love that. And I love what you also said about growth or stagnation, because that, to me, that's how I measure how long to stay in a relationship, right? Because we can't go by the highs and the lows, because every relationship is going to have highs and lows. And sometimes good stuff is happening in the lows. We're facing ourselves and facing challenges, working through stuff. To me, that measurement is growth happening. That's what I use.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah. And how we have dealt with the challenges in our life, learning to come together around external challenges that have, in a lot of ways, are the most stressful things that you can go through as a couple. And so I think, like a lot of things, do the hard things, and often staying together, looking at yourself when you're stagnating, looking at your partner and saying, I got you when you're stagnating or when you're struggling or when you're confused. Yeah, it's a beautiful, beautiful opportunity.
Yeah, and I would say that the hard things are really, our most challenging times are the times where even, where we fell into each other again, like we did in the beginning of our relationship, where it was just like this new awakening of the honoring and the like wanting to connect deeper.
I love that. And because that is so hope inspiring for people who may be going through a struggle in their relationship right now. So what you're saying is that on the other side of that struggle, if we're willing to do the work, that there's hope, there's light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But it's really providing, the way Cameron said it, I think, is one of the cleanest ways that I've heard her say it, which is a relationship is a place for each person to do their work with someone that is cheering their best selves on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love that. We're committed to our own growth and equally committed to the other's growth as well. So that our growth and the growth of the other becomes more important than the shape, the container of the relationship itself.
Yeah. Another thing that you just said reminded me that something that's really made our next, iteration just happening more and more is that we make ourselves accountable to be the people that we say that we are, whether that was in the founding of kindness, which was really asking ourselves, what do we want to be accountable for? We want to be accountable for being kind, to our latest iteration together, the Harrington method. And in the past, we've always had a word or a name in front of the brand. So kindness is close to who we are in our hearts, but it's still one removed from us. And so when we created the Harrington method, we wanted to be as authentically ourselves as we could. And so using our own name using our married name is the best way to be accountable for what we say that we're up to. And when we coach couples, we know the technology that works. There are frameworks for communication that make it safe emotionally for really intense issues to be brought up and to be processed, as long as both people agree to the rules of communication. And when you agree to these rules of communication, it's an if-then process. If you agree and follow these rules, there will be a result that looks closer to a breakthrough. And when we're coaching couples about that, it makes it more difficult for us not to be practicing those things ourselves.
Absolutely.
Right.
Right? Unless we're just sitting there being out of integrity. We're saying, boy, our relationship is on the skids, but this really works for others.
Right.
So we keep putting ourselves in positions where we're accountable for the next version of ourselves.
Yeah.
And that means that we're constantly looking for how can we make it not about us being the only ones that we're accountable to.
Yeah. Yeah, but I love that. And I love that sense of personal accountability and integrity, because I live that way too. I feel like the fact that I teach what I teach makes me, it's like I have to walk the walk. I mean, I have to walk my own talk. So it does make me accountable too. And I hold myself to really high standards because of that. And I recognize that in you. And I love that you do the same. And it is a side benefit.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the honor of seeing people remember and come back to truth and come back to their heart is, I mean, this is what we want, not only happening in our relationship, but worldwide. So when we work on ourselves, that ripples out. When we connect with another and support them on remembering, that ripples out.
Yes.
Yeah.
You were mentioning some of the externals that influence all of our relationships. And I know, with the pandemic, you had some dramatic changes in kindness. You ended up having to move from Denver and abandon what before the pandemic was an incredibly successful studios. I think you were up to like 6 or 7 by the end of it. And kind of start over. And then you had this transition time where you're spending most of your time or some of your time in Costa Rica as you raise these 2 incredible beings, your 2 daughters, which I know adds a whole other layer of pressure on the relationship. So talk about that. Talk about the transition specifically, and in general about how to maintain your connection, your bond in the face of all these external challenges, for lack of another word.
It's a dance of resiliency. And coming back to everything can be gamified, really. Everything can be made fun. And while we get to like be with our heartbreak and not push that under the rug, to actually celebrate that, oh, look at where we are right now, and look at what we're learning, and to connect on that. And I think that that there is something as heartbreaking as it was to leave Denver. There was also a unification of our family. Mm-hmm. We lived on a farm in the middle of nowhere with like 250 people in the little town. And we had this space for our family to come together. And so it's like, okay, feeling, actually allowing ourselves to feel and to grieve what we left behind, but then also dancing with the celebration of what we're learning and what we're gaining has been an incredible practice.
Yeah. And I would say that the pandemic and what happened with the studios and what happened with the call out that occurred and these things was really the death of a version of ourselves, and really recognizing that we're going to leave these bodies, and that the more that we practice, just like as a yoga teacher, every final pose is little death, savasana. And so recognizing that we've taught little death, the metaphorical death, thousands and thousands of times over the last 20 years of teaching, that we were actually the perfect people to get to have this experience, and that we in somehow, some way, attracted an opportunity to practice death of an identity, and of being the good guy, of being seen always a certain way, of, our studios will call it kindness, and yet there was a narrative that was felt by some that our organization wasn't kind. And so that was really an amazing experience to get to, kind of in the same way that when I can, pull away from and allow Cameron the space to work on herself. Inside of each of us, you can pull apart, and I get to watch Patrick dealing with that. So some version of me is watching, wow, I wonder how Patrick's going to handle this. Because he's been talking about death, he's been teaching savasana, he's been saying that these principles of it's a good day to die for years. Well, how will he handle it? And watching that roller coaster of when you're pushed up to the horizon of your growth, how much of what you talk about do you actually practice? Mm-hmm. And so it's taken me up until this point to be able to say that, that experience has made us who we are. And I'm grateful to be having the experience I have with my family right now. And it was hard. It was really hard.
Yeah. And there's a rebirth on the other side of the death.
Right.
And so you've been pointing to what to me are some of the qualities of a healthy relationship, of a conscious relationship, like trustworthiness, to be able to trust ourselves first before we can even trust anybody else, to be able to count on our word, that sense of integrity, before we can also honor and respect the other's word and be able to count and rely on that. The nurturing part of it, the honesty part of it, and that ability to flow and to stay in that willingness to navigate the rough times, knowing that at some point there is going to be that death and rebirth.
Yeah.
So within that context of the rebirth, tell us a little bit about what's come up in terms of the Harrington method, what it is that you're doing now, and how people can work with you.
Start. Yeah. So the Harrington method is really the iteration that's come out of the experience of working with a big service organization like Kindness. When we closed, we had 9 locations, and the month before we closed, there was 35,000 visits throughout the 9 locations. And so it was a place where we were getting a lot of profound but light touches with 160 different teachers or so for 60 to 90 minutes at a time in these yoga classes, and that created big change for a lot of people. But it was very transactional in that people would come, they'd spend some time, they'd get the experience that they did, and then they would go back to their lives. And it really taught us a lot about ourselves and about the deep desire that we have to support people and changing patterns that aren't working and to move towards health. Why? Because we have kids. Because we are really attached to the life that we have as humans on the planet right now. Many people are already experiencing the challenges of the human lifestyle gone crazy. But for us, we really want to support people in moving towards their healthiest version of themselves in a deeper way. And so the Harrington method is a lot about working one-on-one and or with couples and supporting the ripples of change by not just having that transactional 1 hour a week or several times a week yoga class, but really going into what's in the way of your status quo or your average improving over time. And I come at that from more of a masculine perspective. And Cameron comes at that from a more feminine perspective. And yeah, you want to share a little bit about your somatic approach?
Yeah. I mean, I just want to kind of speak to what you said right before this. It's really about finding trust in yourself. And we live so much in our heads. And especially, I think right now, the feminine beings, or, you know, everybody has the feminine and masculine inside of them, but the masculine is really being called for and worshipped in our society, and has been for a long time. And that's how we built this like incredible society. But it's go and do. And so as women, we take that on, and, you know, we want to make sure that the kids are taken care of, that the house is taken care of, then we're running a business, and we're, you know, and then we are supposed to turn into these enchantresses at night too. And we're supposed to hold all of that, right?
Yeah.
But to bring ourselves from the head and drop ourselves like into our hearts and bodies, and we can start to find the balance of the two, because the body never lies, and the body might be like, it's time to slow down, you know, or gosh, I get really anxious when I do this one thing, and then I'm wrecked for 3 days after. And so if we start to listen to the body is going to start to guide you into your truth. And so somatic soul coaching, soma is the body, and going through from the head in through the body so that you can connect with your soul and allow your soul to lead you through life, is, I feel like, is what is so needed right now. And especially just in supporting women, which is what I do, because we're so, you know, we need to hold so much masculine, or we're kind of expected to actually just bring it a little bit more back into balance, and allow the trust of ourselves and the welcoming of our unique innate wisdom that we've been asked to quiet over the years.
I love that. I love how you express that. We've also shared, in addition to like great times, like your wedding, some challenging times. Like Patrick, you and I were in the middle of teaching a retreat when the 2016 elections happened, and this shocking reality that we had to face. And then Cameron, we were in a different retreat this past December when you got news that your dad had passed. And my mom passed, you know, a month later. So you've got the principles, you've got the teachings, you've got that willingness, the commitment to yourselves and to each other, and the willingness to do the work that a relationship requires. Talk a little bit about maintaining center so that you can serve. How do you do that?
Morning practice.
Yeah, consistent practice.
Yeah. Like, you know, one of the things, and even when we fall out of it, we remind each other, but the most important thing that we do each day is to align ourselves. And so morning practice has been our ritual. I don't know, going on 7 or 8 years now.
Since a long time.
Yeah.
What does that look like for you? What is morning practice for you?
You know, it does vary, but most of the time, I know for Patrick, he's moved into something else, which I know he'd like to talk about. You'd like to hear about, but for me, it's, you know, I wake up and I have to freshen myself, and then I sit down immediately and I meditate. And so that's the first thing. And recently I've added just a gratitude practice. Like, I have this beautiful little journal, and I write down 5 things that I'm grateful for each day. And I mean, such a simple practice, and people have talked about it for so long, and I've never done it until this year, but it's profound. It's like, oh my gosh, like just starting the day with gratitude.
Yeah.
And then from there, I do like either self-study or going to the beach or moving my body. And it kind of just depends on actually where I am in my cycle and where I am in the month, and kind of feeling into that to nurture it. But really the practice of meditation and writing has always been. Sometimes it's journaling, but right now I'm just focusing on that gratitude practice.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
What's this new practice, Patrick?
Yeah, thanks. Well, what I know is that there's a real power in being physically fit. And for me, I'd never really had a morning fitness practice. And so adding fitness in the morning has been a game changer for me. And when I look at that out in the world, I generally find that physically, people that are focusing on keeping their bodies as fit as possible, given their circumstances, that translates into everywhere else in life. And so as I started to do this morning fitness practice, I stumbled upon some breathwork practices. And what's called—
Know anything about that?
A couple.
The breath work that you're very familiar with, but the upregulation breath work that is just amazing. And so there's a couple that I do in the morning, and they move so much energy, and starting that way over the last probably 2 months has shifted things dramatically. One of the main things that's occurred is that towards the end of a breathwork session or a period of breathing, I really think back on a version of myself that's younger. And I just kind of let my mind go to any version of myself that it wants to in the past. And sometimes it's like yesterday, but sometimes it goes back to a time when I was a kid. And really breathing into this idea that that time and space are an illusion, and that as I'm with that younger version of myself, I can actually communicate to that part of me that got stuck at that hard time. And it often brings my mind often brings me back to a version of myself that was much younger, that was struggling with something. And so I just have been feeling so much better in general. So much, what I can only imagine as trauma is moving out of me. And so starting off that way in the morning with breath work and then meditation, I'm doing anywhere between 60 and 90 minutes in the morning every morning.
Wow.
And that means getting up between 4:30 and 5, and then going and exercising. And it's just really, I can't believe that I didn't do it earlier.
I love this idea. I think I might take you up on this practice.
Yes.
And I think that an additional effect, I don't know if you've been doing it long enough to see the effects, but it feels to me that the practice of connecting with a younger version of yourself, that it's going to have a youthing effect. It's going to keep you younger.
Yeah, it could be. I love that idea. The amazing thing is that these different versions of myself that I revisit, more and more I'm having this experience of being viscerally in myself when I was younger, and then seeing the version of me now holding me or telling me it's going to be okay, telling me that all of this is going to work out. And I'm having the experience of time and space just coming together. And it's at the edge of my ability to understand it. It's
deep.
Quite amazing. Yeah.
It's deep. I love it. We're intentionally keeping these short, and I know you've got another commitment in a few minutes. So any final words, anything, wisdom about relationships, practical advice, anything you want to say at all to somebody who may be watching this and maybe struggling with relationships or the lack thereof?
I think just trusting, bringing it back to trust, like trusting those little whispers and actually exploring those and listening to them. And the whispers are different than anxiety, right? Like anxiety, our body gets tight, we're in our mind, and when we make decisions in that way, maybe we can't trust that, and we've been living in our mind. But like the whispers that feel really clear, those whispers that feel really grounded, listen to those, and the more that you listen to those, the more that they'll start to come.
I love that.
Yeah.
What about you, Patrick?
Yeah, I would say the same thing. Cameron's taught me so much about listening to my own intuition. And when she says whispers, it's feelings that are for me in my body that when I start to think of taking action on them, the right action brings relief. And from the masculine side of things, because doing is so much in our culture, acculturation, the feelings of discomfort that I have inside is generally, if I follow actions in my mind that feel relieving, I'm being led by something. Not having to have the answers, I'm able to listen and follow, which feels relieving, feels great.
Beautifully spoken. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your time, your wisdom, your beauty with us. And I look forward to reconnecting in third dimensional reality soon.
Yes. You owe us a visit.
Yeah, true.
Okay.
All right. Much love.
And thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.